Hi Year 5, welcome back to the Jamie Drake equation, and here we have chapters 3 and 4. So I hope you enjoyed chapters 1 and 2. Let's see what happens next in 3 and 4. After lunch, Mrs. Solomon gets us to test out the theory of gravity in the gym by dropping balls from the top of the agility tables. It's like an experiment that this old Italian guy called Galileo did when he dropped cannonballs off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. She gets us all lined up, holding different types of balls: basketballs, cricket balls, tennis balls, and golf balls. She says that even though you might think that the heaviest balls would fall fastest and hit the ground first, gravity accelerates them all at the same rate, so the balls all hit the ground at the same time. That's the theory anyway. But then Minty pulled a ping pong ball out of her pocket, and when we dropped all the balls at the same time, Minty's ball hit the ground after everyone else's. Mrs. Solomon said that this was because the ping pong ball is very light, so it was slowed down by air resistance. But I just think that the theory of gravity doesn't work when Minty's around. Stepping out of the school gates at the end of the day, I hear the beep of a horn. Turning around, my heart sinks when I see Grandad Neil waiting to pick me up instead of Mum. He leans out of the driver's window of his van. "Come on, slow coach," he yells. "That lollipop lady says I can't park here." Dressed in her luminous yellow jacket, Mrs. Bagwell shouts angrily back at Grandad. "No, you can't. You're a danger to the children crossing. You shouldn't even be allowed on the road in that thing." Back in the 1980s, Grandad used to be the lead singer of a rock band called Death Panda, until a problem with his ears forced him to retire. He still drives his old tour van, and through the windscreen I can see Charlie crammed into her car seat in the back, waving an inflatable guitar above her head. But that's not what makes the lollipop lady tut as she glares at Grandad's bad parking. It's the huge mural that's painted on the side of the van. This shows a cartoon of a panda riding on the back of a nuclear missile that is heading straight for the sun. It's a pretty eye-catching picture. This was the front cover of Death Panda's first album, Global Warming, This Means War. As I reluctantly climb inside the van, the rest of my class streaming out from the school gates, I hear Aaron Johnson shout out, "Nice wheels, Jamie!" Everyone starts laughing. I duck down in the passenger seat to try and make myself invisible, but this doesn't work, as Charlie just starts bashing me on the head with the blow-up guitar. Still leaning out of the window, Grandad just raises his fist in the air, his index and little finger extended to form the signs of the horns. As he salutes the school with his heavy metal hand gesture, I sink down further into my seat. "Do you want to give any of your friends a ride home?" Grandad Neil asks, flicking his long grey ponytail back as he squeezes his stomach behind the steering wheel. "There's plenty of room." Fastening my seatbelt, I quickly shake my head. Having a dad who's an astronaut is really cool, but Grandad is a serious embarrassment. "No, it's okay. I just want to go home." "Right you are then." With a shrug of his shoulders, Grandad turns the key in the ignition. "Let's hit the road." A tsunami of noise erupts from the speakers, almost drowning out the engine as it roars into life. "I'm a love missile, baby, and I shoot to thrill." I quickly jam my fingers into my ears, trying to block out the worst of the sound. In the back, Charlie squeals with delight, whirling the inflatable guitar around her head again as the thunderous sound of Death Panda rings out. "The temperature is rising as I go for the kill." The van lurches away from the pavement, the lollipop lady flattening herself against the school gates as twin guitars squeal from the speakers. Glancing back in the side mirror, I can see her angrily shaking her stop sign before Grandad turns the corner and she disappears from view. Home for us is actually Grandad's house. Before Dad was an astronaut, he was in the RAF, and we just used to live on whichever Air Force base he was posted to. Mum and Dad never got round to buying a house. Most of the time they just rented a studio for Mum where she could make her sculptures and stuff while we lived in family quarters. We moved a lot anyway, as the planes Dad flew got bigger and bigger. I went to 3 different schools before I was 8 years old as he learned how to fly helicopters, spy planes and fighter jets. Then Dad decided he wanted to become an astronaut, and that was when we really started racking up the air miles. Most of his basic astronauts training took place in Germany, and I had to go to an international school in Cologne. Then there was underwater training in Florida so that Dad could learn how to survive in an extreme environment, while I tried out the high G rides at Disney World before we headed to Moscow, where Dad learned to spacewalk, and I learned that I don't really like Russian food. That was where Charlie popped out, so her birth certificate says she was born in Star City. This is the name of the place near Moscow where all the astronauts and their families live while they're finishing their training. My birth certificate just says I was born in Swindon. So anyway, after Dad blasted off for the International Space Station, Mum brought me and Charlie back home to Britain, and we moved in with Grandad Neil. I don't know why we couldn't get our own house, but Mum said that Grandad would help look after us while she got back to work. I told Mum I didn't need any looking after, but we still moved into Grandad's house. He bought it when he was big in the 80s, and since Grandma left him and moved to the States with her new boyfriend, he's been living there on his own. Now Mum's turned her old attic bedroom into an art studio and is up there most of the time working on her new sculpture. She's in the kitchen when we get home, though, drinking a cup of tea in her paint-spattered smock. Charlie runs towards her with a happy squeal, shrieking with delight as Mum scoops her up and spins her round in the air. "I'm a spaceman!" she cries. Mum rolls her eyes. "You mean a space woman," Mum says as she brings Charlie back down to earth. "Don't forget, girls can be astronauts too." Then she gives me a smile as I shrug my rucksack off my shoulders and set this down on the kitchen table. "How was school?" she asks. "Fine," I reply, pulling out my homework folder. "I've just got to revise for this maths test tomorrow." From the back garden comes an ear-splitting squeal of feedback, and my shoulders sag as I realise what this means. Even though Grandad's rockstar days are over, he still likes to go out to the barn to play his guitar, very, very loudly. There goes my chance of revising in peace. Seeing the pained expression on my face, Mum quickly shakes her head. "Don't start revising now," she says, raising her voice as the sound of a crunching guitar chord rings out and Charlie starts dancing around the kitchen. "Why don't you get some fresh air first? I'll make sure Grandad finishes practicing by 6, and you can pick us all up some fish and chips on your way back." Mum pulls out a £20 note and pushes it into my hand. Grateful for the chance to escape, I quickly shove it into my pocket along with my revision worksheet. As the deafening crang of another guitar chord shakes the kitchen window, I head for the door and the one place where I'm guaranteed some peace and quiet. Chapter 4. From up here on Beacon Hill, you can see everything. The whole village is spread out below me like a Google map. There's Grandad's house, the long back garden with the barn at the bottom backing onto the wild meadows. Luckily, I can't hear his guitar playing from here. Then over there is my school, Austin Park Primary. Its green playing fields surrounded by the new housing estate. The houses look like little boxes, and with my finger and thumb I pinch and drag out the empty air, trying to zoom in to imagine what kind of family I'd find inside each one. I bet they wouldn't have an annoying Grandad like mine. The sun is starting to dip on the horizon, turning the sky a golden orange. I've got the revision worksheet spread out on my lap, the page of equations still looking impossible to me. Then I hear the roar of the fighter jet before I see it. The plane keeping low as it hugs the hills, heading back to the RAF base where the US fighter jets are stationed. I jump as my mobile suddenly rings. Fishing my phone out from my pocket, I look down at the caller display. "Hi, Dad." There's a 2-second delay, and then I hear my dad's voice on the other end of the line. "Hi, Jamie. I just phoned your mum and Charlie at home, but I couldn't get hold of you, so I just wanted to check you were okay." Dad's kind of amazing. He's not even on this planet, but he's still making sure I'm all right. Where are you, son? Up on Beacon Hill, I say. I just wanted a bit of peace and quiet for a while. Grandad's practising his guitar again. Dad laughs. Beacon Hill's probably the only place in Bramsfield where you can't hear Neil's guitar. I used to take your mum up there when we first started going out. Mum and Dad both grew up in this village. They started going out when they were still at school and have been together ever since. All the newspapers say it's so romantic. There used to be an observatory up there at the top of the hill, Dad continues. Your mum and me would go in on their open evenings and look up at the stars. When I looked through the telescope, it seemed as though the moon was close enough to touch. I could even see the spot where Neil Armstrong took his first step. I think that's what made me want to fly a spaceship. But I'm stuck here whizzing round in low Earth orbit instead. In fact, I'm heading over to you right now, Jamie. Give us a wave. I look up, my eyes scanning the horizon until I see the familiar glint of the ISS, a silver streak in the darkening sky. Dad showed me how to spot this before he went up into space. It looks just like a fast-moving plane, but without any flashing lights, and because the ISS is so high up, it doesn't make a sound. Dad promised me that whenever he was flying straight overhead, he'd always keep an eye out for me. I can see you, Dad, I say, lifting my hand to wave at this shooting star. Me too, son, he replies, his voice as clear in my ear as if he were sitting next to me and not 400 kilometres above my head. There's a moment of silence as I try to work out what to say next. When Dad's at home, I can talk to him about anything. All the funny things that happen at school, any problems I've got with my homework, what we're going to do together at the weekend, everything I'm thinking about, and all my worries too. There's so much I want to tell him now. How I wish he was home for my birthday, how living with Grandad is driving me mad, and how I can't stop worrying about his spacewalk on Friday. But when you've only got a few minutes to talk, it's hard to fit everything in. Then I hear a long beeping tone in the background, like a phone that's been left off the hook. Are you still there, Dad? I ask. I hear the echo of my own voice on the line, and then Dad's voice cuts back in. I'm going to have to go, Jamie. This is something I need to check out. Is everything okay? I ask, panicking at the thought of anything going wrong up there. From meteor strikes to toxic leaks, Dad has explained to me all the different dangers he could face on the ISS. In an extreme emergency, the astronauts have to take shelter in the Soyuz capsule that's connected to the space station in case they need to make a quick escape. No need to worry, son, he replies. It's just a caution alert. Probably some computer system's gone offline. As he speaks, the beeping tone suddenly stops. There you go, he says, panic over. I just need to find out what this alert was from, and then I can inform Mission Control. I'll speak to you tomorrow on our family video call. The ISS is dipping low on the horizon now, giving me one last glimpse before it disappears. Bye, Jamie. Bye, Dad. And then he's gone, travelling around the world in a tin can at over 27,000 kilometres per hour. I'm nearly out of breath by the time I reach the very top of Beacon Hill, my shadow lengthening as the last rays of the sun leach out of the sky. I can't stop myself from shivering. I should have brought a jacket. Mum is probably expecting me back about now, but I don't want to go home yet. I want to see the observatory that Dad mentioned first. If it was here when my dad was a teenager, then it must be well out of date by now. They put telescopes up into space nowadays so that astronomers can look further and further out into the universe. I glance up at the darkening sky, clouds now starting to appear on the horizon as daylight fades away. You wouldn't be able to see much from here. Then I see it. Half hidden behind a bank of trees, a squat red brick building topped with a white dome-shaped roof. The walls of the building are half covered in ivy and shrubs, making it blend in with the woodland that surrounds it, and as I get closer, I can see coils of barbed wire sitting below the lip of the dome, its white paint peeling in places and mottled with a greenish tint. The observatory looks abandoned. The only clue to its former life, the rectangular slit in the side of the dome left open to the sky. I reach a rusting chain-link fence, the battered red and white sign that's fixed to this property. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. But less than a metre to the left, I spot a gap between the fence post and a padlocked gate, the chain hanging so loose that it's easy enough for me to squeeze through. Up close, the observatory looks even more derelict, its curved red brick walls crumbling in places, the chunks of rubble almost lost among the weeds. It doesn't look like anyone has been here for years. There are no windows, and as I skirt round the edge of the building in search of a door, I wonder what might be left inside. Maybe the telescope is still working, and I'll be able to catch a close-up of Dad on his next orbit round in 90 minutes' time, if I could just find a way in. Then I see something that stops me in my tracks, silhouetted against the setting sun. It looks like a robot riding on top of a giant techno spider. It's nearly twice my height, its 4 metal legs extended and planted in the ground, while the satellite dish head is pointing to the stars. On its sleek white body I can see a bright blue logo, LOGS. And like the crumbling observatory, this looks like it's just fallen off the back of a spaceship. I step closer, peering at the strange machine to try and work out exactly what it is. That's when I feel the shotgun press between my shoulder blades. "Don't move," a woman's voice growls, "or I'll let you have it." So that's the end of chapter 4. Now, your work to go with these 2 chapters, I would like you to read back the text from chapters 3 and 4 and draw a picture of what you think Grandad looks like. And you can use examples from the text to label your picture. So, for example, without reading it again, I can remember that Grandad has got a grey ponytail. So already I can imagine that he would have long grey hair tied up at the back, and I would label that with information from the text. So I look forward to seeing all your wonderful pictures of Grandad Neil. Remember to give him a good heading, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye now, Year 5.